we don't normally do stories about personnel issues, but a firing at NBC10 this week caught our attention because of why investigative reporter Karen Hensel was let go, and because those reasons could have affected her news judgment, thereby possibly tainting what she told viewers. On Monday of this week, NBC10 investigative reporter Karen Hensel was called to the boss's office and fired. The reason? She failed to disclose to management who she is dating.
Are you all frustrated?
Yeah, extremely.
By her own admission, Hensel is dating this man, Auburn Police Chief Andy Sluckis Jr.
The chiefs of Yarmouth, Auburn, and Woburn, sitting down with the NBC10 Boston investigators.
Shortly after she was let go, Hensel emailed colleagues saying she was self-policing and didn't do any stories involving the Auburn police after she started dating the chief. She also criticized the tipster for going to management instead of coming to me with their concern.
Auburn Police Chief Andy Sluckis.
When they went to handcuff him, he tensed up, wouldn't cooperate.
In looking over Hensel's past reporting, there are several involving Auburn police, but Hensel says they were all before the relationship started. When asked whether the station would alert viewers that Hensel's reporting might have been compromised, an NBC spokesman said, "Karen Hensel is no longer employed by the station." There is no further comment. First of all, we do hesitate doing these kinds of stories because there's always a lot that goes on behind the scenes. You have no idea. Maybe there was another reason, an ulterior motive for wanting to get rid of her. I really don't know, so I don't know all the specifics. I do know that there's a very serious internal policy, because several people from inside told me what it was, and it covers this kinds of thing, that you should disclose. She would have been better off disclosing. There's no question about that. Did the punishment meet the crime? I'm not sure I believe it did, because if, as she tells us, she did no reporting about the police chief after she started the relationship, and maybe she gave tips to the desk and that kind of thing, then, it doesn't strike me as maybe a punishment, maybe a fine, maybe a suspension. But management has made a number of mistakes here. For one thing, after firing her, they let her back in the building. And apparently she confronted one of the reporters there, accused her of being a snitch. It became an ugly scene. I mean, that's management 101. And finally, if management did discover that they thought she might have been reporting on some of these things after she started the relationship, they owe an explanation to the viewers.
Well, that's where I would start out. Clearly she should not have self-policed, as she describes it. Clearly she had a responsibility to go to her bosses, to let them know, to make sure that things were done right after that point. But given that she didn't, we wouldn't have learned about this, right, if it hadn't leaked out. I can't remember the name of the website, but the sort of TV news gossip site that we got it from. I don't understand what NBC10 is doing here. It would increase their credibility if they came out and said, as has been reported, we parted ways with her. Here, here's what she did wrong, and we have strict policies that weren't followed in this case. I don't get the rationale for not doing so.
I couldn't get anywhere with them. I tried.
I'm going to assume, let's make the assumption that she's telling the truth in every way. I'm not sure that there's any obligation for her to say anything up until the point where she's asked to go do another story on the Auburn police. And at that point, of course, she has to disclose, look, I'm dating the police chief. I can't do these stories anymore. I don't see what the obligation is up to the point when she is not doing any stories on it. The whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. And obviously, there's more to it than meets the eye, but we don't know what it is.
So I would say maybe she's not under any obligation, but there's a huge perception thing hanging over this in addition to whatever the policy is. Because my first reaction was, do they have a policy and did she follow it? She didn't follow it, then there you go. But if it's kind of fuzzy, how I read it was somebody else has been in this situation and they got away with it. That's just how I read it. I could be wrong. And now she's annoyed that this is coming back on her. I don't think it was good enough to just wait until she was dating the guy. I think you had to. I don't know. I think you need to say right away. We're dating. May not turn out to be anything. Giving you a heads up. I don't have no intention of at all doing anything with him anymore with regard to news. But you just should know that. I think that was really the only way to protect herself and to protect the newsroom, quite frankly, because somebody can look back and say, yeah, the reason he's getting such good press is because he's dating her.
They did get very good press.
I mean,
one of the lines was something about Auburn police exhibited extreme restraint. I mean, that's not a lead line.
Right.
I mean, tell me what the story was.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the only last thing I would say, which actually doesn't have much to do with the policy here, but annoys me, is that the woman goes down and the guy just walks free. No consequences for him dating her.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
Well, full disclosure here, right? That's disclosure.
Yeah.
That's the issue, right? I work for a competitor of NBC10, so I'm not going to second guess and have no insight into what went on behind the scenes there. I would say it's a cautionary tale for everyone, not just journalists, to take whatever steps you can to make sure your boss isn't unpleasantly surprised by something like this. That's weird. But then, of course, there's the further question of trust from the viewers. And, I think you want to be careful. I wonder, even though he's not a reporter, about George Conway, the Washington attorney who happens to be married to Kellyanne Conway, who's writing all sorts of commentary. He did commentary on MSNBC the other day. I'd be interested to know what the disclosure policies are there, even though the tone of his commentary is not exactly buttering up his wife's agenda, or maybe it is. I don't know.
I want to say one more thing about the final action, which felt draconian to me in this age of Me Tooism and plagiarism. I mean, we've seen some very, very serious journalism, and I think it's good that journalistic organizations are policing themselves and taking action, but this didn't seem to quite rise to the occasion of having your head cut off.
Well, I said it just feels to me like something else has gone on there, and that's the result.
All right.